In the previous life, she dressed as Yin Zhen's concubine and served him diligently for 3 years. In the end, she was sentenced to death on unfounded charges. And Yin Zhen only took a glance after death, leaving only one sentence. Be cautious. Indeed, monarchs have no heart. In this lifetime, she became a concubine, and according to historical records, there was no good ending. Then let's just mess it up. If you can't stand Fu Jin pretending to be virtuous, then you'll have a strange aura of yin and yang, which will anger her to death. Unable to tolerate Li's portrayal of softness, she grabbed a wrong spot and cursed fiercely, turning false softness into true softness. The Yin clan is excessively domineering, and rumors have spread to the previous dynasty. Yin Zhen had no choice but to go and be vigilant. At first, she only used Nian Shi as a tool to win over General Nian, but now she always leads her emotions. Although he was preparing to provoke a questioning, his words changed when he saw Nian's face. Yin Zhen. If you have any unhappy things to tell me in the future, there is no need to do it yourself. Nian Shi. I was born into a martial arts general family and don't know how to adapt. I'd better go find someone who can adapt. Yin Zhen. I only want you. Nian Shi. Dog men are really greasy. Keywords of the novel. After the failure of the strategy, I displayed the complete TXT collection in size backyard without a pop-up window. After the failure of the strategy, I displayed the latest chapter in size backyard to read. Chapter 1. Becoming the Year Side Fu Jin. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 1 Becoming the Year Side Fu Jin DDD, the first strategy mission failed. Do you want to start the second strategy? Ah. I'm XXX. Host, the system prohibits the use of vulgar language and will result in a deduction of credit points. Chen Nianan dressed up as Li Wanwan and served as Yin Zhen's concubine for 3 years. She was gentle and understanding like water. Even if I have modern knowledge, I can recognize that for a powerful monarch like Yin Zhen, if I were to be strong, I would easily be seen as a partner rather than a lover. So I endured his 3 wives and 4 concubines, enduring his unpredictable emotions. Just as there was only 1% left until Yin Zhen fell in love with her progress bar, she was wiped out by a cup of poisoned wine from Fu Jin. All the efforts were in vain. Is the system not warning when such a great danger appears? Chen Nianan asked fiercely. The previous strategy did not enable the danger prediction function due to a system error. Considering that the failure of this strategy was due to a system error, you can freely choose characters for this strategy. Chen Nianan reluctantly tugged at her mouth and touched her chin, thinking for a moment. Although she came from a good family background, she was her own enemy and couldn't be chosen. By the way, the newly appointed Nian Bian Fu Jin, although her fate has been recorded as bad in later generations, is arrogant and domineering for a while, making it suitable for her to vent the remaining anger from the last strategy. I choose Nian Bian Fu Jin. As soon as the words fell, Chen Yinyan was thrown out by the system. At least let's start again, this system is getting worse and worse. I waive your invitation today, you can rest for a while longer. Why did the plot come so quickly? There's no prior story summary at all. 2 lifetimes are seamlessly connected, and working is not as difficult. Based on the memory of the previous life, last night should have been the first night that Nian Shi entered the mansion. The familiar voice made Chen Nian's body involuntarily shiver, afraid that his own bones had not cooled through in the previous life, and this person had already climbed up from the bed of other women. Indeed, having a couple for a lifetime is the most unrealistic fantasy of ancient kings in novels. Based on the memories of his previous life and his understanding of Yin Zhen's preferences, he pretended to be weak and helped himself up, saying softly, "Thank you, Prince." Yin Zhen listened to the soft voice and leaned over to take a glance. This tone and demeanor are similar to those of her own little Tongfang. When Xia Tongfang has a child, she will also be given a name, and she will have a place to belong. Watching Yin Zhen wandering in front of her bed, Chen Nian began to doubt the seductive power of her body and deliberately lifted the scarf on her shoulder. Slowly getting up from bed and leaning against Yin Zhen, she pretended to be shy and said, "Will the prince come tonight?" When she was a concubine, Chen Nian dared not say such words, but now she is at least a side lucky Jean. Such provocative words cannot be said too hard, and they can also make this mission end early. "Let Duke Su come to pick you up at night," Yin Zhen said gently, rubbing Nian's hand. During this period, it is time to use the Nian clan. Even if Nian Shuren is not desired, he will still spoil it and show it to outsiders in the near future. Chen Nianen, still wearing a shy smile, saw Duke Su enter in a panic and whisper to Yin Zhen, causing Yin Zhen's face to change. I didn't care about the newcomer beside me, and even my usually serious face showed a panicked expression. How dare she? Even if she is a concubine, life and death should come to ask her. It seems that the death of the previous life has been discovered. Agarwood, tidy up and let's go take a look. Being a spectator of one's own death in the previous life can also be considered the first time in the history of strategy. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Died in vain. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Died in vain. The person who acted coquettishly in their arms a few days ago is now only left with a cold corpse. Even though the Qin Feng Hall is now filled with people, it is quiet enough to hear a needle drop to the ground. Host, for your safety, I advise you to leave this place of right and wrong immediately. Humph, I listened to you so much in my previous life, didn't I still die? In this life, just speak less and don't let me die. Because the system bug makes it difficult to raise its head, even if it is mocked by the host, the system can only choose to remain silent. Woo woo woo. I am about to become the first system in history to be despised. Although concubinely doesn't have any status, she is also someone who serves the master. I hope the master can thoroughly investigate. The gentle and firm voice of Nian Shuren made Qin Feng Hall even quieter and more silent. The cold sweat on Duke Su's head increased even more. Regarding the matter of killing his concubine, Fu Jin did it openly and honestly. This year, Fu Jin even said to thoroughly investigate, which can be considered a public challenge to Fu Jin. Okay, it's really a good fortune that I married myself. I had a crush on her for being virtuous, but now I'm using her to kill people. Get out, everyone get out. Yin Zhen roared angrily. Master, this matter can't just be settled like this. Seeing Nian Bian and Fu Jin getting more and more excited, Duke Su quickly gave Chen Xiang a glance. After Chen Xiang understood, she quickly stepped forward and covered Nian Shuren's mouth to drag him away. Bian Fu Jin, concubinely, was ordered to be executed by Fu Jin. She intended to assassinate the lord, and the evidence is conclusive. Even if it were to cause trouble, Fu Jin would still be right. It's rare to see such a heartfelt master in the mansion, and Duke Su couldn't help but remind him. The matter of concubinely has been settled, and even the prince cannot change it. Please don't interfere. So let people die for nothing. Chen Nian was not convinced and counterattacked Duke Su's loud words, which attracted Yin Zhen. White death. Bian Fu Jin said cautiously, it's not something that can be judged by the laws and regulations of the country, as a woman in the backyard. Yin Zhen looked at Li Wanwan, who was trying hard to argue about her age and safety, and wanted to find a trace of calculation on her face, but there was none. Why not? What she asked was also what she wanted to ask. How could she have died in vain? Today, I will calculate on her, and in the future, I will retrieve every bit of it. Dogs and men don't even have a heart. They only show heartache in their front feet, and preach in their back feet. She plotted against the Lord, aren't you still standing here properly? How can it be considered murder? Chen Nianen remained dissatisfied and tried to distinguish how she had been killed and had to bear such unfounded charges. At this thought, Chen Yinyan's tears couldn't help but roll down one by one. The tears dripped onto the clothes and quickly disappeared, but the tears that dripped onto Yin Zhen's heart did not disappear. After so many years, I still can't even protect my concubine. It's because I'm not strong enough. Su Peixing, Nian Shi is feeling unwell. Let her rest behind closed doors for a while, and you can personally take her back. Host, the target audience's favorability towards you will be increased by 1. Congratulations on having a good start. A good start is being locked up. I really opened my eyes, isn't this system going to explode? Don't keep insulting the system. Yin Zhen shook her sleeves and left, while Nian's problems were all in her heart. Li Wanwan was just a concubine, and she should have thought nothing had happened. But why did her heart ache so much? Previously, she said she wanted to live a free life outside the mansion, but now it can be considered as her wish. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Confinement. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Confinement. Nian Shi is the younger sister of a military general. Unlike the group of aristocratic ladies who were originally full of military flags in the mansion, she did not expect to cause trouble on the second day of entering the mansion. Olanara was sitting in front of the mirror, her head carefully combed by Grandma Hu. Fu Jin, I don't think this Nian clan looks like an fun either. It's a good opportunity to use this ban to suppress the situation. Hu Mama is the most capable nanny under Fu Jin's command, and also a nanny brought over from her mother's family. Her words can be considered very influential in the mansion. Olanara frowned, and this year she looked similar to Li Wanwan, both Han Chinese women. She then nodded and agreed to Hu Mama's suggestion. Be cautious, there is a general named Nian behind this year's clan, which is different from the Han concubine. Now is the time for the imperial court to use military force, so we cannot offend him. For so many years, the prince has respected his wife. If it weren't for Li Wanwan, he wouldn't have had to argue with the prince himself. But this slut actually wants to win the prince's heart, which is really unbearable. The heart of a prince can belong to the court, the world, or his wife, but it cannot belong to a concubine. During the reign of Emperor Xuanji, he was absolutely not allowed to appear in the royal palace. On the first day of reopening a game, I was locked up. Is there anything worse? Before she could figure out how to walk down, she saw Chen Xiang walking in with a heavy face, like Shuang beating an eggplant. What's going on? The cafeteria, these despicable things, dare not give me lunch when I see the young lady in confinement. Hee, a common tactic in the backyard. Zhengqiu couldn't go see the prince, these fools sent me up. Host, please have a more restrained expression. The target audience is watching you outside the door. Chen Yan's face quickly changed to sadness, and she caressed her chest and said, forget it, we are not familiar with the place of life. They are also instructed by others and have their own difficulties. We just need to eat a few less meals. Miss, how could we have been so angry in the mansion before? Qinxiang received a signal from Chen Nian's gaze and deliberately amplified her voice. Nian's foot ban was originally meant to protect her. If she is not vigilant in the future, she will not be able to live in the royal family. But this confinement was actually used by someone with a heart, and Yin Zhen couldn't bear it anymore. It's time to renovate this backyard. The target of the strategy has left. Chen Nian let out a long sigh. Can you bring this warning earlier next time? I've changed my face and my face has become stiff. The second Chen Nian had too much resentment, and even the system dared not continue talking, afraid of being scolded. Gulu. Miss, I'm hungry, said Chen Xiang, covering her stomach with embarrassment and showing a pitiful expression. Wait, there will be food coming soon, Chen Nian said confidently. According to 3 years of understanding of Yin Zhen, he was already on the path of cursing, and poor Duke Su was bound to become cannon fodder today. Soon, Duke Su came over with a lunchbox, and Chen Xiang looked at him with even greater admiration for the young lady. Thank you, Duke Su. Chen Xiang walked in with a food box, and without much hesitation, Duke Su left immediately. This year, Fu Jin acted recklessly, but he had some ability to keep the prince in mind. Will the palace change in the future? To do a good job, one must first sharpen one's tools. When you're full, get ready to start causing trouble. First, mix up the water in the royal mansion, and then rectify the people who bullied you in the past 3 years one by one. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Fighting Wild. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Fighting Wild. When I was serving as a concubine in the previous life, I heard that Fu Jin only loved lotus. As a token of gratitude, the prince planted lotus flowers in the pond in the backyard. This season, there must be no lotus flowers left, but there must be many lotus roots. Chen Yen was born in Jiangnan in this world. Coincidentally, he had done the task of digging lotus roots before, so he remembered the taste of his hometown's lotus root clip. Miss, what are you thinking? Just finished eating, why is your mouth watering? Today, we had Duke Su help us get by with this meal. We don't know how long this foot ban will last, what can we do in the future? Chen Yen's words made Chen Yen's face look sad as she was still young and innocent. Why don't I go beg Duke Su and say a few good words in front of the prince? Maybe. Before Chen Nianen could finish speaking, she waved her hand and said, what are you thinking? The prince is not a child, how could he lift the foot ban so quickly? It's just a child's play. What should we do then? That day, I saw many blooming and withering lotus flowers in the backyard pond. There were lotus roots under these lotus flowers, and we picked them back and made them into lotus root clips. We could eat a lot now. Chen Xiang's eyes lit up, even though she didn't know why her young lady knew about these things, her desire to survive had reached its peak, and she didn't care about fear. Warning, the pond lotus is the beloved item of the Olanara clan. Your behavior will be punished. Don't worry, this pond tonight is all my food. It is estimated that Chen Nianen vented all her grievances over the past 3 years on this pond. A weak woman overturned the pond overnight. The next morning, looking at the emptied pond, Olanara almost fainted with anger, but fortunately she was helped by Grandma Hu. This matter did not avoid anyone, so soon the Olanara family came to ask for help. Due to the hard work last night, Chen Yen was still sleeping during this period and was hard woken up by the agarwood. Not sleeping well combined with physical labor makes one look very weak. Nian Shi, how dare you break my lotus flower? Chen Nianen pretended to be scared and knelt on the ground, tears streaming down her face. I'm a newcomer here, and I don't know if it's a lotus from Fu Jin. Since yesterday's confinement, our meals have been cut off in the cafeteria, and the pond is the only place we can reach. That's why I had such thoughts. Chen Xiang has been deeply impressed by the speed at which her own young lady changes her face, which is truly impressive. Listening to Nian's crying, Olanara felt like a thorn in her throat. She was not wrong at all, even if she broke a lotus flower and caused trouble, it was only innocent for those who did not know. I feel heartbroken at the thought of my own lotus, which was planted in my first year of entering the palace and has now disappeared completely. What nonsense are you talking about? It's clear that you're doing evil and falsely accusing others. When will our royal family cut short on your diet? The Olanara clan distinguished the importance of this and refused to go into Chen Nianen's trap. I have just entered the palace and do not understand the rules of the palace. I would like to invite the prince to come and preside over justice. As soon as Chen Yen finished speaking, Chen Xiang received the signal and quickly ran out towards the place where the prince was. Stop her quickly, it's a serious crime to escape without permission during confinement. Olanara never allowed this matter to escalate to the prince's side, so she quickly spoke up to stop it. As Chen Xiang was about to be caught, she happened to see Duke Su in front of her and shouted, "Duke Su, help me. My young lady is almost exhausted." End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Handling. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Handling. Yin Zhen, who was walking in front of Su Peixiang, was also surprised. She walked over quickly and asked, "Yesterday was fine, why can't today be better?" Chen Xiang didn't explain the reason, only kowtowed wildly to the prince, "Please help my young lady, please help my young lady." Yin Zhen saw that the people chasing after Chen Xiang were all from Fu Jin, and his heart skipped a beat. He quickly avoided Chen Xiang and rushed towards Nyenyen Pavilion. What kind of behavior is a bastard pulling maids in the mansion? Su Gonggong looked at the person who was still kneeling on the other side and kicked hard to relieve his breath. The person next to Fu Jin always had their eyes higher than their heads. Yin Zhen entered the courtyard and saw Nian Shi kneeling in the courtyard, swaying. Under the sunlight, her face had turned white to transparent, and her heart tightened. Fu Jin's methods have become more and more powerful. What is it worth inspiring others like you to punish the still imprisoned Nian family? I am willing to hear your reasons when the time comes. Yesterday, Guan Nian's confinement was just a way to temper her character. She was born into a family of martial generals, and there were not so many women in the backyard. On that day, she was seeking justice for Wan, as Yin Zhen had already noticed. Surprisingly, they still haven't escaped. Ulanara blessed the prince and softened her tone when she saw that the prince was already angry. Last night, Nian turned the pond in front of the courtyard upside down. The lotus flowers planted in this pond were from the year my concubine entered the mansion, which the prince gave me. My concubine was very heartbroken, so she lost her sanity. Oh. Is that right? Yin Zhen clearly didn't believe it, and said to the Nian family again, "Do you have any objections to what Fu Jin said?" Seeing Yin Zhen asking the Nian family in this tone, the Ulanara family knew they had lost the game. After my lord locked me up, the dining room refused to provide food, so I had to resort to this strategy. I really didn't know that the lotus in the pond belonged to Fu Jin. I am worried about not finding a reason for rectifying the backyard. Now that all the excuses have been sent to my door, why can't we come for a first trial? Su Peixiang, who ordered you to personally investigate the matter of not providing food to Fu Jin. Now it was Uranela's turn to panic, and when Humama saw Fu Jin's expression change, she quickly stepped forward to help. This kind of bad thing happened in the backyard, but Fu Jin didn't notice it at all. It seems that this backyard needs to be properly cleaned up. My concubine is incompetent. Now the situation is completely on my side, and Ulanara's words have not been finished yet. She fainted in the arms of Madame Hu. If you can't say it, you'll faint, who wouldn't? Chen Yan gave Agarwood a look, and at the moment she fainted, she steadily fell into Agarwood's arms. Looking at such a chaotic scene, Yin Zhen knew that he couldn't come up with anything today. Replace all the people inside and outside the dining room, all the original ones have been reviewed, and after the review, they will be released. Yin Zhen didn't want to take care of anyone, and after explaining it, he just brushed his sleeves and left. Chen Yan asked Chen Xiang to hold her inside the house and casually closed the door, closing all the noise outside. Chen Yan, leaning on the shoulder of Agarwood, couldn't help but say, "Pui, I'm laughing to death." Did you see the expression on Ulanara's face? When the master said he wanted to investigate thoroughly, his face turned green. This is called, stealing a chicken can't eat rice. Originally, I wanted to make myself hungry, but who would have thought I would just lift the table? Chen Xiang looked at the young lady with a look of admiration and said, "Miss, you're amazing." I just saw Fu Jin's face turn green, but it scared me to death. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Shadow of Previous Lives. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Shadow of Previous Lives. I worked hard all night last night, and today I sang another big play. Chen Yin couldn't hold on anymore and slept until it was dark. Chen Xiang looked at the prince standing at the door, then saw that there was no movement inside the room. She could only raise her voice and shout, "Miss, the prince is here." Silence, still silence. Su Peixing silently wiped his sweat, having seen someone who was not as deadly as before. Well, let's all go down. I'll personally take care of Fu Jin. Yin Zhen's face was cold and pretty good. He played tricks in front of him during the day and didn't come to beg for mercy at night, so he could continue to sleep. Holding the lamp, Yin Zhen felt guilty, and her anger had just subsided when she saw Nian Shi's irregular sleeping posture, which was quite similar to that of concubine Li. It was almost autumn, and there was always a slight chill after nightfall. Yin Zhen walked to the bed and pulled the blanket to wrap the person up. Chen Yan, who was sleeping soundly, was awakened by the rustling sound. She looked at Yin Zhen with a hazy gaze and said, "Sir, are you coming back so early today?" With every frown and movement, it perfectly matched the person in her memory. Yin Zhen stepped forward and hugged the person into her arms. "I'm sorry, it's always me who didn't protect you well." Before Chen Nianen could speak, Yin Zhen had already deprived her of the right to speak and could only make a woo-woo sound to protest. Standing outside, still feeling frightened, Agarwood suddenly heard the commotion inside the room and blushed. Mrs. skills are really extraordinary. Even Su Peixing, who was familiar with Yin Zhen's temperament, admired it. It seemed that the situation in the backyard would have a turning point due to the arrival of Fu Jin. The just recovered physical strength was depleted again, and Chen Nianen leaned against Yin Zhen to breathe lightly. "I dug a whole pond last night, is that all I have today?" Yin Zhen sat sideways, with a smile on his face but sarcastic remarks. "System, can I stand up and beat Yin Zhen severely? We do not recommend you to engage in such dangerous behavior here." "Oh, I really have my teeth knocked out and I still have to swallow them in my stomach." With a shy expression on his face, he leaned against Yin Zhen and said softly, "How can a pond of lotus roots compare to my master's wisdom and martial arts?" Yin Zhen looked at Nian Shi, who had put on a pretentious expression on her face, feeling speechless for her recent days. Nian Shi and Li Shijie were vastly different. The bakery didn't give you food, but Su Peixing brought food. Why bother pulling out that pool of lotus roots? Speaking of that lotus root pond, within half a day, even the palace knew about it. The Empress Dowager summoned someone to ask questions, but this matter was too absurd. Fu Jin didn't know how to speak, only said it was spread outside. Yin Zhen didn't care. A few days ago, he was scolded by Emperor Alma for being unpredictable. Now that the court is struggling, it's better to stay in the backyard for fun. I really didn't know that the pond was a lotus from Fu Jin. I came from Jiangnan and used to make lotus root dumplings at home. When I entered the capital, I rarely ate them. Yesterday, I was deceived and went to secretly pluck a few. How many are pulled out? This year's family really said that there are only a few left in the entire pond. Chen Yan glanced at Yin Zhen as she didn't respond. The heat on her face had just subsided, and she seemed to be away from strangers. Yin Zhen didn't answer and closed her eyes to take a nap. Even though I grew up in a socialist country since childhood, I worked as a concubine in the backyard of the royal palace for 3 years, and of course, I am aware of the interests involved. In the previous life, even if he was dismissed from the poisonous wine by Fu Jin, he silently endured it without any resistance. Sure enough, as soon as a person goes bad and goes crazy, the world becomes fresh. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Wind and Rain Bamboo. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Wind and Rain Bamboo. As soon as the fourth master's foot left the Fu Jin courtyard on the side of the year, the bowl in the courtyard was shattered on the ground. That's really good. It's clear that I want to hit my face. Olanara sat angrily in the main hall. This year, she had only been in the mansion for a few days and dared to be so arrogant. It was a long time since Fu Jin had seen such an angry expression, and Mama was also startled. The fourth lord highly valued the dignity and inferiority of the legitimate and commoners, and this was the first time that Fu Jin had been humiliated since entering the government. What are the results of Su Peisheng's visit to the dining room? Fu Jin, rest assured that the people in the dining room are all our confidants, and no one will reveal anything. Ulanara sighed, no matter what, he couldn't disclose the matter of the dining room anymore. What the Lord hates the most is to tamper with him under his nose. Let them wait for Duke Su to finish and choose a new group of people. Hu Mama responded and retreated. The Ulanara family has been in charge of the family for many years. Although the incident with the Nyen family made her angry, it did not affect the overall situation. She is just a newcomer who causes trouble and has no roots or bottom, and cannot survive in the royal mansion. Let her be proud. Su Peisheng tried the people in the dining room, but found nothing and could only go to the prince with a confession. Looking at the unanimous words on the table, Yin Zhen sneered. Very good, very good. I really found a virtuous and virtuous Fu Jin. In just a few simple words, Su Peisheng broke out in a cold sweat. The master hates the people in the backyard doing some small things in private, but this time it's still Fu Jin. Sir, all the people in the dining room have changed. Do I need to go and check the people in the backyard again? Even if this thing sprouts after rain, it keeps pulling and growing. Only by flipping it all over can it be completely transformed. Yin Zhen was raised by a noble concubine since childhood, but was also disliked by her birth mother. This means of backyard is clear. I remember there was a painting of wind and rain bamboo in the study. It was sent to Nyen Bien's Fu Jin side, but the one hanging in her room didn't match her. The conversation suddenly changed too quickly, and Su Peisheng was a bit choked. This painting reflects the situation of Nyen Bien after the Fu Jin period, becoming famous and immersing oneself in the wind and rain. Chen Nyen, who had been working hard for 2 consecutive nights, was moving a recliner in the courtyard to rest when she heard the arrival of Su Gonggang, Chen Xiangtong. When a person is favored, they become less pure. At this time, they missed the life of a concubine in the previous life a bit. After dealing with Yin Zhen, it's all their leisure time. Please come in, Duke Su. Su Peisheng held his paintings and brought several servants with him, along with a few pieces of jewelry and silk, loudly announcing the rewards in the courtyard. I was really afraid that others wouldn't hear it, so Chen Nianen dug out her ear. Signifying for Chen Xiang to give gifts to the recipient, the Nyen family came from a military general, but the Nyen family was wealthy and generous. They offered gold melon seeds in hand, and even Duke Su waved his hand, saying he couldn't bear it. Chen Nyen remembered the kindness that Su Gonggang had shown him in his past life, and asked Chen Xiang to give him another hand. If this situation is not resolved, he may have to move a box back in the end. Su Gonggang quickly picked it up and ran away with the servant. Coincidentally, next door lived a trusted confidant of the empress, who was staying at the residence of the Li family of Fu Jin. Listening to the continuous rewards and polite greetings from Duke Su, Li's angry teeth were about to bite. Su Peisheng, relying on his father's confidence, usually ignores him, but now he is bowing his head to the Nyen family. Inger, do you have a fellow villager in the sewing room? Inger was a big maid bestowed by Fu Jin after the Li family entered the mansion. She was actually a surveillance girl and bound 2 people to a grasshopper on the same rope. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Dumb Friends. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Dumb Friends. Li has been by the side of Fu Jin for many years and knows that it is difficult for Fu Jin to inherit, which is why he has always kept himself. Therefore, for the sake of his children, whether willing or unwilling, he always chooses to stand by Fu Jin's side. I do have a fellow villager in the sewing room. Then tell your fellow townspeople what you just heard. You don't need to add fuel or vinegar, just tell them truthfully. Even if something goes wrong, I can't blame myself. At most, it's just a servant discussing the master recklessly. I'll go to the warehouse to pick some things later, and we'll meet Nyen Bien Fu Jin. Master, you entered the mansion earlier than Nyen Bien Fu Jin and also gave birth to children for the prince. It should be her who came to pay your respects. Li shook her head. Her mother's family did not show any signs of success. Apart from her contributions in childbirth, she had never had the capital to establish herself in this backyard. Too much talk, it's all my lord's women, there's no reason for it. As a woman in the backyard, Li Shi is one of the few who is clear-headed. She is only capable of surviving in the backyard for any indulgence. Inger, seeing Li Shi like this, also fell silent and quietly retreated out. However, Chen Nianen was too lazy to deal with the people who came to give gifts, only claiming that she was not feeling well and that the people in the backyard had not even met. During the few days of confinement, I found out about my old friend's place and it's time to go see him. Chen Nian, who had sent Agarwu to guard outside the door, flipped through the window and deftly found the maid of Qingfeng Hall, serving Mo, based on her past life memories. Sure, Mo and his previous self entered the mansion on the same day. After his death, he had no work in the study and was arranged to do a sweep in the library in the front yard. Sure enough, the man was truly ruthless. On the second day after his death, all the people in the Qingfeng Hall and study were replaced by Yin Zhen, as if Li Wanwan had never appeared again. Cough cough. Sure, Mo focused on wiping the bookshelf, not noticing Chen Nian's arrival at all. He could only deliberately cough twice to remind him. Upon hearing the sound, Sure Mo did not turn around to check, but instead, like a startled bird, wanted to walk inside and take shelter. Fearing that Sure Mo would leave, she might never be found again. Chen Nianian quickly stepped forward and grabbed Sure Mo's arm. Don't be nervous, I am. Chen Nianen realized something was wrong and quickly swallowed it. I am Nian Bien Fu Jin. I was previously imprisoned for Li Wanwan's incident, and I know she did not harm the master. I just want to clear her name. No matter what Chen Nianen said, Sure Mo shook his head nervously. Seeing that sisters in the past were so timid, together with the previous grievances, tears could not help rolling down. What are you afraid of? Do you really want you sisters to die without explanation? Sure Mo also shed tears and pointed to his throat in terror, shaking his head vigorously. In just an instant, Chen Nian understood and let go of Sure Mo's arm, crying loudly. It was she who had caused trouble for the other person. I don't understand why the favored Nian Bien Fu Jin would hold on to him and cry uncontrollably, while the attendant Mo stood helplessly, his throat sore, and he couldn't ask for the reason. After a long time, Chen Nian finally let go of the ink and wiped away her tears, saying, I will take care of you carefully in the future. Let's pretend we haven't seen each other today. Until Chen Nian left, Sure Mo still didn't understand what had happened. He was truly kind-hearted and quickly went to find a piece of paper to write on. Hurriedly catching up with Chen Nian, stuffing the paper into her hand, and politely leaving. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Sincerity is a must-kill skill. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Sincerity is a must-kill skill. Walking to the pond at the entrance of the courtyard, a slight cool breeze blew before Chen Nian woke up and activated the system. Is there a way for the system to restore Sure Mo's voice? No character's progress can be changed, as it was agreed upon the first time. As long as I successfully conquer the fourth lord, can I leave here? Yes, you are the second, and many basic system prompts are gone. Although I don't prompt, I have been there. In this cannibalistic feudal society, one would be comforted by systematic robots. Spread out the paper in your hand and say, thank you for your blessings and blessings. The pond is deep, cherish yourself. On the words of Sure Mo, Chen Nian's tears quickly stained her. If it weren't for her own involvement, she might have lived this life smoothly and peacefully. When Chen Nian appeared in the library, someone had already reported to Yin Zhen. Before the Nian family entered the mansion, the news that came to Yin Zhen's side was that although the person was weak, he had a gentle and virtuous temperament. The current situation is completely opposite to what was said at that time. When Yin Zhen received the news, he couldn't sit still anymore. He went to the library and rushed to the courtyard of Fu Jin next year, only to stand by the pond in a daze. Nowadays, there are no more lotus flowers to admire in the pond. I wonder why Fu Jin was lost in thought. Startled by Yin Zhen's sudden voice, he clenched the note in his hand, tidied up his mood, and slowly turned around, bowing his head and bowing. "Sir, are you coming over for dinner?" Her red eyes were clearly crying, and even a gentle expression couldn't conceal it. It's not uncommon to see a woman in the backyard crying with red eyes, but Yin Zhen has never felt as heartbroken as at this moment and doesn't know how to ease the atmosphere. "Who made you cry? Who else can there be? It's you. It's you. It's you." The straight ball of the upper ups is like a leader in the workplace, always liking to ask questions that shouldn't be asked and showing a very innocent expression on my face. During his 3 years with Yin Zhen in his past life, he was well aware of his grandfather's prudence, and almost everything in the front and backyards was under his control. My death may have been his only miscalculation, so he indulged the Yin family and also had a hint of warning others. I was planning to secretly go to the library to see what good things were inside, but I met a mute maid who scared me. "Why did you leave a mute maid in the library?" Sincerity is the only necessary skill, and when it's time to be honest, it always satisfies someone who likes to doubt. Upon hearing the answer, it was true that I was overthinking. What Nian Shi said was consistent with the news reported by Yingwei. During this period, the situation in the court has been mixed, making it difficult for me to even see through family matters. You can tell Su Peixing what you want in the future, don't sneak out alone. Yin Zhen hugged Chen Nian and walked towards the small courtyard. Seeing that he had not mentioned the matter of serving Mo, he must have already fooled him this time. He still needs to be careful in his future actions. "You have been in the palace for half a month and have not yet met your mother in person. It is indeed inappropriate. Let Fu Jin lead you into the palace tomorrow." "Yes." Nian Shi lowered her head, and Yin Zhen couldn't see her emotions clearly. Olanara Shi was safe in major matters and would definitely not make any mistakes in attending such a grand event in the palace, so she didn't worry much about her situation. Chen Yinyan is a little worried. Wulanala pays more attention to good names, and she certainly won't embarrass herself. However, Princess De likes her daughter-in-law very much. She has just entered the door when so many moths come out. Tomorrow, she is going to be a target. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. When it's time to bow your head. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. When it's time to bow your head. Watching Fu Jin from her own side being led in by the prince, Chen Xiang was almost scared and fainted. She was caught the first time, but still by the prince. "It's over, it's over. Prince." Agarwood fell to her knees with a thud, startling both of the people who had just entered the door. "Get up, let's forget about this time. You can't just play around with your master in the future." Yin Zhen didn't want to reprimand either, it was just that this servant had set the atmosphere up to this point and could only make a few pretentious remarks. Chen Nianan, who was already feeling unhappy, saw someone condescending and remembered the attendant Mo in the library. Tears couldn't stop flowing down her face. It really left Yin Zhen at a loss. Just now, this sentence didn't even count as a tap. How could she cry like this? "Why are you crying again? Are you going to see me tomorrow with such eyes?" There is no woman in the backyard who is as difficult to deal with as the Nian family. They all say that the daughter of the general's family is free and easy, but they themselves have not noticed it at all. If the prince thinks I'm embarrassed, he'd better imprison me. He also knew that he was going to see him tomorrow, so he should go comfort Fu Jin today. Don't give me any trouble tomorrow. If he returns to his own yard now, tomorrow is bound to be difficult. Why are you talking so much? I asked the bakery to make lotus roots into lotus root clips for you. They will be delivered over for dinner tonight, so it's not a waste of your hard work. Can't this broken lotus root pass through? After 3 years of getting along, Chen Nianen had already figured out Yin Zhen's habits. A small disagreement can increase feelings, but continuing on is not a good thing. He smiled and said, "Thank you very much, sir. I saw a beautiful orchid in the library today. If I behave well, can you give it to me?" It's still a child's nature, easy to coax. Yin Zhen has silently set a position for the Nian family in her heart. That depends on your performance tonight. If I'm satisfied, I'll have Su Peixing hang that painting in your room before you come back tomorrow. It's a deal. The moment before, Chen Nian was still very happy. In an instant, his face darkened and he said, "I will see you tomorrow. I haven't even prepared a gift yet, why don't you give me a choice?" Yin Zhen nodded at Nian Shi's head and said, "You know how to be lazy. The Empress Dowager doesn't care about these external things, as long as she has sincerity. Fu Jin will arrange gifts and these things, so you don't have to worry." "That's good, I didn't originally intend to please Empress Dowager. If I guess correctly, Empress Dowager was also planning for her own death in her past life." Yin Zhen can still be considered a person, knowing that he will enter the palace tomorrow and has restrained himself a lot at night. Sometimes Chen Nianen is thinking, if it weren't for her past life experience, how could she bear such high-intensity work? Entering the palace doesn't need to be eye-catching, and as a bride, she can't wear too plain clothes. Yin Zhen helped choose a tender pink double-breasted jacket. In order to avoid making mistakes, Chen Nianen waited for Fu Jin at the door in advance. He had not yet gone to the mansion to invite him. Today, he saw Fu Jin coming out at the main entrance and invited him in a proper manner, ensuring that no one made a mistake. "It's difficult for my younger sister. I've been guarding here so early, and I have to recite scriptures and pray for my mother's blessings this morning. Therefore, I'm late. I hope you can forgive me." After the last incident, the Olanara family was well aware that it was not the right time to confront the Nian family head on, but they had plenty of time. They would always be Prince Yong of Fu Jin. "Waiting for Fu Jin at the door is my duty," Chen Nian said, bowing her brows and eyes. End of this chapter.